Great Scott!
Are you a sports fan who loves to have a good laugh?
Oh, yeah!
Then you're in the right place.
I'm gonna make him an offer again.
Life moves pretty fast.
Patriots win the
Welcome
Super Bowl!
to the Man Cave Chronicles.
Brady has his fifth!
What do you think, gang? Should I open it?
You have to tell the truth to enter the door.
What does that mean?
I don't know.
Tell the truth. Entering the door.
Say it!
Tell the truth. Entering the door.
Guilty.
Tell the truth. Enter the door. Tell the truth. Enter the door. He's a liar. There's something you're not telling us, Jimmy.
Hello, friends.
Mr. Neighbor's House 2 premieres June 24th at midnight.
Welcome to another episode of the Man Cave Chronicles podcast, a podcast of top culture where everyone has a story. I'm your host, Elias, and you can find me on Twitter at the MCC Podcast. My guest this week, you've heard him on Bob's Burgers, seen him on shows such as People of Earth, Veep, New Girl, and also the star and writer of Mr. Neighbor's House 2, Brian Huskey. Brian, thanks for joining me in the cave today.
Thanks for having me. It's one of the nicest caves I've ever been in.
So what's new with you?
What's new with me? Let's see. My daughter's starting volleyball today, her first sport. So that's exciting. She's 11, so
Okay.
it's a big deal. What else? Other than that, I'm working on Veep right now. This show for HBO called Veep, and I did a special for Adult Swim that you can see online at their website called Mr. Neighbor's House and Mr. Neighbor's House 2. It's like a dark kids show that plays in the mind of an insane person.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I got some questions written down for you about that. So,
Oh, good.
So I know the listeners, like I said, you mentioned Mr. Neighbor's House, Veep, People of Earth, Bob's Burgers. Man, you've been busy. But I want the listeners to get to know.
Yeah.
I want the listeners to get to know you a little bit more. From where are you originally from?
Originally, I'm from North Carolina. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina.
How was it growing up there?
It was good. It was, it's better. Like once I moved away, all the banks kind of moved into Charlotte and made it far more conservative than what I remember growing up with. No offense to any conservative listeners, but they kind of messed up the town a little bit, made it a little elitist in my view.
Yeah.
But I loved it. It was great. Yeah, it's North Carolina is great. It has some problems. It definitely has some. They don't respect their teachers, or they suppress voting rights. But that's only the product of some of the people who are in power right now. Otherwise, the people are great there.
Yeah. So you studied improv, right? You moved to New York City for that?
Yeah, I moved to New York in, oh my God, I'm so bad with dates. I think 96, maybe.
Okay.
And I was a photographer, and I moved out there to do a 1-year certificate program at this photo school called the International Center of Photography. And so I did that, and then I started shooting my own stuff and assisting other photographers. And I moved in with this actor named Rob Corddry, who people might know from Ballers, and he was on The Daily Show. And we're just roommates, and he was like, "You're funnier than the people I perform with in a sketch group. You should probably be doing this stuff." And I've always wanted to be an actor. And I just need somebody to be like, "Hey, you should do this." I was like, "Oh, really? Okay, here I go." I didn't have the confidence to kind of like embark on it myself. And I also kept trying different ways of getting into it. And it wasn't until I found improv that I was like, "Oh, this is what I've been doing with my friends for years. This makes sense." And I also used to play in a band, and there's something about the improv community and just improv itself that reminded me of the band scene in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So
did you
I was like,
so when you were growing up, were you like into more like you liked watching improv, kind of like, whose line is it anyways, or were you like more like stand-up comedy?
I had no knowledge of improv growing up. It was more like my stuff was before he became a Me Too monster, Woody Allen, Monty Python, Steve Martin. I definitely liked more absurdist kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And I was never much of a stand-up guy. I liked people who were kind of like world builders, in a way. That sound in the background, listeners, is the sound of cars. It's a modern reality. We got to deal with it.
Oh, yeah. You mentioned Steve Martin, and I'm a huge Steve Martin fan from like his old movies. I love like The Jerk and My Blue Heaven, and I mean he's done some great stuff.
Yeah, he's amazing. His writing stuff is great too. Like, and then one of the big influences on me was Woody Allen had this series of books, Without Feathers. What's the other two? I can't remember. But it was a culmination of all these things he used to write for the New Yorker, and just like weird little stuff. And they were just these crazy, absurdist little essays and stories and plays and stuff. And I just remember it being, my mind just been like, you can do that? But this is so dumb. An adult guy, like a grown-up, wrote this. This is amazing. So that kind of stuff. And then Monty Python, my stepbrother turned me on to. He's like, you should watch Monty Python. It's on PBS. And I watched it, and it just cracked my head open. It was great.
So I read online you did try stand-up one time. Tell us a little bit about that.
Oh, I don't even remember. I mean, I've tried it a couple times. One was a very half-assed. Like I just wrote down some bits on paper, and then as they were tanking, I just started improvising. But that was in familiar territory. That was at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, where I've been performing for years.
Yeah.
So it wasn't in the context of like going up on a night where other people were stand-ups. I've done stand-up venues and clubs and stuff, and done like character stuff. But yeah, I don't go towards it. I like working with other people and reacting off of them. And I just don't think in terms of like writing jokes.
Yeah.
It just doesn't occur to me. But I have people all the time like, oh, that's funny. You should write that down. I'm either unfocused or lazy or just such a nice guy that I don't want. People can take the joke and do whatever they want with it, but I will sue them.
Now you became part of a comedy troupe, the Naked Babies. How did that form?
That was like I said, I was roommates with Rob Corddry, and we wanted to do, in coming into the improv scene, we were wanting to sort of like make our bones a little bit. And, the Upright Citizens Brigade was sort of everyone's, I guess, sort of like model for how to do it. Like do a sketch group, try to get a sketch show, do improv, self-generate. So Rob mentioned that there's somebody in his improv class, Seth Morris, who was funnier than him, and he was jealous of him, but he also liked him. So he should probably try to get him. And then he was also working with John Ross Bowie. They both worked at Scholastic Books as a temp job. And so he was like, and my buddy John wants to do improv too, so maybe he could join up. And we were just like, sure, yes.
Yeah.
Just kind of like came together. And I remember we went over, Rob was cat sitting a friend's house, and we would go over and do like sketch reads at this house that smelled just reeked of cat piss. It's hard to be funny in the stinging ammonia of cat piss.
Do you guys still get together and perform?
We don't perform, but Rob was EP on Mr. Neighbor's House, and I mean, there've been a few occasions. Once a year, we all try to go to a friend of ours years ago started this comedy festival in Telluride, and they basically just say, if you'll come perform, we'll give you a place to stay and ski tickets and stuff. And we're like, yes, that sounds great. So we have the opportunity to do that, as per people's schedule. but it's the older you get, the harder it is to kind of come together.
Yeah.
But we're all dear friends. Like they all I just turned 50 this weekend, and they all came for the birthday and stuff, and it was great.
Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
So
I sound like I'm in a new demographic now.
So you mentioned Mr. Neighbor's House, and I read online you wrote it with Jason Matsoukas and Jesse Falcon. How did you come up with the idea for Mr. Neighbor's House?
So Jesse and Jason and I and some other performers do a show every week at UCB called Soundtrack, and we always go to the bar afterwards and just hang out and have a drink. And we started talking about the weird regional kid shows that we grew up watching, and just sort of started talking about how, like, the more low rent they were, the more they had this kind of weird menace to them. Like there's something a little off about them. And we just like, it would be funny if I was the host of a sort of a demented kids show, was just the genesis of it. And so Rob used to do Children's Hospital, and he was in a position to sort of go to Adult Swim and say, like, I have another idea, like he had a deal open. And so we pitched it to Rob, and he's like, that sounds cool. It was honestly like the easiest, pitch I've ever done. Basically said, like, here's the idea. They're like, yes, do that. I'm like, okay, cool. But it fleshed out from there. Like I didn't want it just to be a show where I was crazy for no reason and mean for no reason, Like I think Adult Swim is great, but sometimes the craziness gets so untethered and it just kind of loses itself. I wanted something that was always kind of came back to, like, why we might be experiencing this level of insanity. Yeah. What's it about? What's the genesis of it? So he's wrestling with his personal demons. Yeah. Yay!
So you play Jim, who hasn't, like, spoken a word in 7 years, right?
Yeah, that's in the second one.
Second one, yeah.
I mean, he is like Jim Neighbor is Mr. Neighbor. And so we play with, one of the things we play with is, like, whose reality is this? Like, we don't have a reliable narrator or point of view, because we're not sure if it's happening in the mind of actually Mr. Neighbor or this guy Jim Neighbor, or if they're the same person. So I mean, the pitch for the as I started to kind of like hone in on what we could do with it, the pitch became like it's like a David Lynch kids show. Okay. And that's sort of where we are now. We're just sort of playing with, like, what reality are we dealing with? Yeah.
So after you did the first one, did you know right away you wanted to do another one?
Oh, well, we originally had done it as a pilot.
Okay.
They asked us to do a pilot, and we did a 15-minute version. And I thought it was going to go, but you never know in this business. So they said, we're not going to do a pilot, but if you'd like to do a special. So we did a special, and they loved it. And then Adult Swim is a funky network that kind of disappeared for about a year and a half. And then I think Rob was having a meeting with them about some other thing. And the head of the network was like, oh, but yeah, you guys did that, Mr. Neighbor. Do you want to do another one? It's kind of like he just forgot. Like, he's like, oh, yeah, is this yours? Yeah. You left this at my house. Do you want to have another one? Yeah. So we're like, yes, please, because we totally wanted to do one. So right now we're hoping the third one will happen. But you never know.
How did you come up with, like, some of those characters like Buddy and Chef Bread and even Jim?
I don't know. It's funny when people ask those kind of questions, because it's like, you just things. I mean, people have the craziest thoughts. I think it's sort of like what I was talking about earlier, where stand-up will have a joke idea and they kind of pounce on it. I'll just have a weird idea and kind of lodge it in the back of my head and find a place for it. But it's like in playing with the kids show genre, you're already sort of blessed with this extra layer of, like, how whimsical and weird things can be. So you just kind of go from there. You know, you just build it up a little bit more, and then you juxtapose that with some like harsh emotion or some kind of darkness.
Yeah.
Whoa! I just got driven over. And it kind of pumps it up. I mean, one of my favorite guys who never says a word or does anything is Spaghetti Face. He's just a guy who's got a bowl of spaghetti for a face.
So when you wrote this, did you pitch it just to only Cartoon Network, Adult Swim, or did you go to other networks too?
Just Adult Swim, because it was a thing that Rob had a deal for another project. So we're just like, what if we did this?
Yeah.
And they said, go ahead, give it a shot.
I was asked to ask you, when the trailer came out, did you freak out any kids? Did you hear anything?
What do you mean? You mean when I released the little thing for the show?
Yeah, like did you hear any responses back from the trailers?
No. I mean, a lot of people, if they do post something, they're like, that was scary.
Yeah.
But we tried to be clear about, like, anything on Adult Swim is not it's not for sort of like, 17 and under, basically.
Yeah.
Although, with Rick and Morty, they're large part of their fan base now is tweens. So they gotta watch what they put on there.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember I showed my daughter the pilots, and she was young at, maybe, I can't remember how old she was, maybe 7 or something at the time. And I said, like, there's one part that gets really scary. So if you don't want to watch that, that's okay. She's like, yeah, I'll watch it. And it was this whole thing where I go into my own brain, and then afterwards, like, yeah, I didn't like that part. I didn't like that part.
So I mentioned earlier that you do voiceover on Bob's Burgers also. Tell us a little bit about that. Tell us a little bit about that and the character you play on the show.
Well, I play regular size Rudy, who is this classmate of Louise's, and he has asthma, and his parents are very overprotective of him. Or his mom is overprotective of him. We've never seen his mom, but I actually play his father as well. So I've done scenes where I've had dialogue with myself in the same, like, I've just toggled back and forth between being the dad and the kid. But yeah, he's I was surprised. People love that character. I've had a lot of pretty much the only fan mail I get is from playing that character on that thing.
Yeah. I mean, it's got a good
following. It's so great. Like, it's got a huge following. And it's just, and also it's just, as far as just from a work standpoint, they are the nicest, coolest people, the writers, the main cast. It's just kind of a ideal, lovely, unheard of situation in in this line of work.
Yeah.
Everybody's very laid back, very supportive. They encourage improv. Yeah, it's nice.
Do you enjoy doing voiceover work like that?
Oh yeah. Oh my God. If I could get listen up, Hollywood. If I could get a VO job, it would be fantastic. It's fun. It's you can dress however you want. You can let yourself go. Yeah, it's terrible for hygiene because you can just like give up, but great for being lazy.
Yeah. And last spring you were also on New Girl. That must have been a blast.
Yeah, that was cool. Yeah, I didn't realize, like, I was talking to Jake Johnson, and he was like, yeah, at this point, our audience is mainly tween girls. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, at this point, the show started off of being appealing to sort of like 20-somethings trying to figure out their adult life, to their fan base being these, 10, 11, 12-year-old girls. And so he's like, I'll walk through the mall and I'll have a gaggle of girls come up to me, and he's like, I'm always very uncomfortable with this. I'm like, please, this is I can't handle this. Get away. This is weird.
Yeah. What do you think has been your biggest achievement so far in the acting world?
God, I mean, honestly, just a continuum of work. I mean, it's it's a really, really fun, rewarding, pinch yourself that you get to do it kind of job. And just the fact that I've been blessed enough to kind of do all these great jobs and work on these great shows. I mean, pretty much all the shows that I work on, I am a fan of. So it's kind of crazy. I really haven't had to kind of take a gig where I'm like, all right, I'm going to bite the bullet and do this terrible sitcom or whatever. Like
Yeah.
I've been very lucky to sort of be part of stuff that I like. So
if you weren't an actor,
it.
what do you think you would have been doing right now?
I guess I probably would have continued to be a photographer, but I think I would have been depressed as a result. I like doing photography, but I didn't like doing it as a job. And I could tell when I was doing it that I was like, I have an itch that's not getting scratched. But it's funny, that's a conversation a lot of actors have. Like, well, if this goes belly up, can I sell shoes? Would I be okay? As a lot of actors end up doing, would I be a real estate agent? Like, what would I end up doing? I don't know. I know I have to do something creative. Like, I'll go bananas if I don't. So, whatever it would be something where I get to create.
Do you have like a dream role that you want to play someday, or like a goal?
Oh God, I would beyond love to be in a Coen Brothers movie. That would be, I would love to do a Coen Brothers movie. I think that's a big one. And then, I'd like to do my own series. I'd like to do something that gets to have sort of like a continuum in life to it, beyond just, the specials are really cool, but it'd be great to sort of really, really see how far something could go.
Yeah. Do you see maybe Mr. Neighbor like getting picked up as a series on Cartoon Network?
No, I don't. I mean, I think they would have at this point if they're going to.
Yeah. And
it's very dark. It really, Adult Swim is kind of the only place you could do something like that. But right now it is kind of not like, if we get to do a third of them and have the third one kind of worked out, that would be great. That would feel like a healthy, bookended, trilogy kind of project, which would be very satisfying. If anything, I hope people kind of see it as like a calling card for what I can do.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So throughout the years, you've played a lot of characters. Which one is your favorite and why?
That's a tough one. Not to dodge the question with your gotcha journalism, but I think I don't really have a favorite, but I loved playing Chet on Children's Hospital, because he's just so absurd and random and a healthy blend of sort of like scary and sweet at the same time. I really love doing Veep because it's just the best TV show out there, and just being a part of that is so amazing. And I like playing that guy. He's an asshole. I like being an asshole. And who else? I'm trying to think who. Oh, and then it was great doing People of Earth. I really love Richard Schultz. He's such a tragic figure. But alas, TBS decided to make a huge mistake.
Yeah. So,
do
you have any future projects that are coming up?
Well, no. That's the. Oh wait, somebody's now using their bandsaw. Can you hear that? Let's just tell people I'm farting, like a sustained fart in the background. No, right now I'm writing some stuff, which is always sort of like a big investment. It's writing to me is like the longest audition you'll ever do, because you'll just go through all this stuff and they're like, yeah, you know what? I don't think we're gonna do this. That's why acting is great, because you go in and within like 2 or 3 times of trying to do it, they'll figure it out. So I've got a couple of things I'm writing. I'm going to do some pitching on, but yeah, it's an open horizon right now beyond doing Veep.
Yeah,
so
that's good.
All you casting agents listening to this, get on it while it's hot.
And lastly, how can the listeners find you on social media?
Oh, listeners, this is top secret. I am both on Instagram and Twitter as the Brian Huskey.
Right.
And I'm more on Instagram than Twitter, because Twitter bumps me out. I will selfishly promote stuff on Twitter, and that's about it. And Instagram, it feeds my photographic past. That itch gets scratched on that thing.
All right.
So yeah,
this was a blast. Let's get you back on in a few months. This was fun.
Cool, man. Thanks. And I love your cave. I love what you've done with it. It's not as mildewy as people say. So it's great.
Thanks so much for listening to the Man Cave Chronicles. Follow them on Twitter at the MCC Podcast. We'll catch you next time.